when Africa heard the words, "We are deeply sorry," from a U.S. president. When U.S. presidents came to Africa to apologize for slavery. When we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, the centuries of human suffering, chains, and stolen futures, one might wonder, has America, the land that profited most from that dark era, ever truly said sorry to Africa? Well, 3 U.S. presidents, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama, came close. Each stood on African soil, looked into the eyes of history, and tried in their own way to face the ghosts of slavery. But did they really apologize? Or were their words just another chapter of diplomacy wrapped in sorrow? Stay tuned, because we're about to revisit those powerful moments when Africa heard America's remorse echo across its shores. Part 1. Bill Clinton, the near apology. It was 1998. President Bill Clinton embarked on what many called a journey of reconciliation. He toured Ghana, Uganda, Rwanda, South Africa, and Senegal, the largest African visit ever by a U.S. president at the time. But the most emotional stop was Gorée Island, Senegal, once one of the main departure points where enslaved Africans were shipped across the Atlantic in chains. As Clinton stood before the door of no return, he said, open quote, "It was wrong, a crime against humanity. We are deeply sorry for it." Close quote. Those words echoed through the island like the cries of ancestors. For many Africans, it was the closest America had ever come to a public apology for the slave trade. Yet there was a catch. Clinton carefully stopped short of calling it an official apology. He spoke of sorrow, but not responsibility. He expressed regret, but avoided the political weight of reparation or guilt. Still, in that moment, many Africans felt a flicker of acknowledgement, that finally the superpower built on centuries of black labor had whispered a painful truth: we were wrong. Part 2. George W. Bush, sorrow without apology. 10 years later, another American president would walk that same path. George W. Bush, during his 2008 visit to Benin and Ghana, stood on Gorée Island, just as Clinton did. He called slavery, open quote, one of the greatest crimes of history, close quote. Bush too expressed deep sorrow for the suffering and pain inflicted on millions of Africans. He visited the slave houses, walked through the same narrow corridors, and stood before the ocean that swallowed countless lives. But again, there was no formal apology. The message was sorrow, yes, but wrapped in political caution. Still, it mattered. Because in that moment, the descendants of the enslaved and the enslavers stood in the same space, bound by memory. It was as if Africa and America were both acknowledging that the past cannot be erased, but it must never be forgotten. Part 3. 2009, the Son of Africa returns. Then came Barack Obama, the first black U.S. president, a man whose very name carried hope for a new era. In 2009, Obama visited Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, one of the largest slave trading forts on the continent. With Michelle Obama by his side, he walked through the dark dungeons, the same rooms where Africans were once shackled, beaten, and sold. Obama said, open quote, "It reminds us of the capacity of human beings to commit great evil," close quote. His words were not an apology, but a reflection, a moment of connection between history and humanity. He didn't focus on guilt. Instead, he emphasized healing, unity, and progress. He reminded Africans and Americans alike that their shared history of pain should not define them, but drive them to build a better future. For many, his silence on an apology was disappointing. But for others, seeing the first African-descended U.S. president honor that memory was symbolic enough, a circle almost complete. Part 4. Beyond words, the apology that never came. Clinton came close, Bush showed sorrow, Obama reflected deeply, but none of them said the words, "We apologize." No official apology has ever been issued by the U.S. government for slavery or the transatlantic slave trade. Not to Africa, not to the descendants of the enslaved. And yet, each visit, each tear, and each word spoken on African soil was a reminder that history still breathes. The wounds may have faded, but they are not healed. Because an apology is not just about words, it's about justice, remembrance, and restoration. So what do you think? Should America finally issue an official apology for slavery? Or are words too late to heal the centuries of pain? Let's talk in the comments. And if you believe history should be told truthfully, like, share, and subscribe. Because on Afri Facts, we don't just tell history, we uncover the truths they tried to bury.